When I jumped into cold water for the first time, I was dealing with depression.
What I recommend to anyone, if they want to, figure something out, well, go ahead and try it. Eat only plants for 30 days and see how you feel.
It's just scary because the reason I bring that up is because this morning, one of the parents also asked me or didn't even ask me, just commented and said, my daughter, so a kid in school, was approved for Ozempic. And she's not even that overweight. She's literally not overweight.
The challenge really is that, with most parents, are you going to believe, the influencer on YouTube or your pediatrician, right?
Right.
Obviously, we are not a medical authority, we just happen to share stuff that's been working for us.
Hey, I'm doing similar to you. I used to watch your videos all the time. I still do. I subscribe to your channel and I love watching your videos, and I feel like we work with a lot of the same brands, and This is our first time actually talking.
For the most part of my life, I thought I was feeling good until I started feeling good. I'm like,
Same here. If I had to give somebody hey, do this, it's free, I would say only take cold showers. Don't even turn the water hot. Go outside as soon as you wake up, as soon as your eyes open up, and put your bare feet on the ground and walk around for 5 minutes.
But I've come to realize, especially in the last maybe 1 or 2 years, that a lot of the science is BS. It's influenced, it's poor quality, and it's very difficult, at least for the average person, to figure out whether or not the study is good.
I've never gotten medical advice from somebody face to face that I want to look like. There was a time in my life where I was really chunky and chubby, actually a long time in my life. And I used to say it was just my genetics. I used to say, I'm just built big. I'm a bigger guy.
You need to find something that you can do for the rest of your life. There is no such thing as a 30-day diet or a, reset or, it's all BS,
Brand new. So I got home, started taking ice baths and cold showers every single time I took a shower. And it changed my life. It really did. I know people say that about everything, but it did. It changed my life.
Are you ready to revolutionize your health and reconnect to your primal self? Welcome to the Primal Shift Podcast.
My goal with the Primal Shift Podcast is to show you how to achieve optimal health, and that includes the health of your body's largest organ, your skin. Today's sponsor, OneSkin, has a line of topical supplements powered by the OS01 peptide. It's the first ingredient scientifically proven to reduce the accumulation of senescent cells. That's one of the hallmark signs of aging. And for a limited time, my listeners will get 15% off their first OneSkin purchase with code MCOMER at oneskin.co. That's oneskin.co. And now back to the episode. All right, David, thanks so much for joining me on the show. I really appreciate it. I came across your name, or I read your name, I think it was a couple of months ago, and I'm like, this dude must have German ancestry.
I do. Yeah. I do. Yep.
Yeah, there is.
We're German and Italian. It's kind of like that weird mix that you didn't think happened, but it happened.
Yeah, actually, I'm quarter Italian too, and obviously I'm from Austria. So, but mouse is, as German as it gets.
For sure. No, it is mouse. But then when we moved over here, I guess my parents or grandparents were like, no, it's moss. So it's like, I answer to whatever.
Cool. Well, when I first saw your content, I'm like, wow, this dude is kind of like me, but more successful. So, I got to learn more. I got to figure out what he's doing that I'm not. But, that should not be the main topic of today's episode. I really want to learn more about, why you transitioned from running several car dealerships to working on your health and fitness full time and making an income, by doing so.
Yeah.
That's really, because that kind of, reflects what I've been. I used to be in software sales, not in, in the automotive industry, but nonetheless, it's kind of a hard cut going from, corporate America, so to say, to cold plunging all day and making money with it,
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's a dream, and it's honestly just all a gift from God. I have no idea how I'm doing what I'm doing, but it's working.
But it's working,
awesome.
Yeah.
It's working, man.
What was one of the, shifting from the automotive industry to focusing on personal health and wellness? What's like one of those, what was one change or habit that you have adopted in your daily routine that, anyone who is interested in improving their health and well-being could benefit from?
Oh man, that's a great first question. Cold showers and cold plunging, getting into cold water. So backstory, I'm from Florida, so we don't have cold water. 12 months out of the year, the lake behind me or the ocean the coldest it gets is 75 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So like that wasn't really that cold. Our showers aren't even that cold, but
Right.
I was actually out snowboarding with a bunch of buddies about, back in 2020. It was like right around COVID time here in the States. And we got back from snowboarding all day. Ankles were sore, knees were sore. We went backcountry. We were just having a blast, but we were exhausted, and we were going to do it all again the next day. And one of my buddies, he was a little bit more on the crunchy side at the time. That was the word crunchy. If you ate like super organic, super clean, all that stuff. And he's like, dude, let's go jump in the river behind us. And there's like ice floating down it. We're like, no, we'll die. There's no way we can do that. And he's like, no, let's go do it. So we jumped in there, and it was like the most invigorating feeling in my life. And at the time, I didn't really realize it, but I was experiencing some pretty intense brain fog at work. I had done the same thing for 20 years, automotive for 20 years, not the same thing at all. It kept progressing. I kept climbing the ladder. I was the vice president of our business, and for the last 7 years of my tenure there. And I learned a ton. My dad was probably, he was like the only healthy person in his family. So I adopted a lot of habits from him. Like we would be on vacation, and instead of taking the monorail or whatever, we would walk, instead of just sitting on the couch, we would see who can do the most push-ups. So like we always were active. He was always super active, and I love that about him. And I think that inspired me to always stay fitter than most that I worked around. So I'm kind of answering two questions here: the transition from automotive, how I got into health and fitness, and then basically the first thing that really changed my life that I think others should adopt. And I think it's cold water therapy. So jumped in that water, got out, and I just felt like a new man. I think about that movie. It was like a Ryan Reynolds movie where he's a video game character, Free City, Free Guy, something like that, where he like walks out of the bank and he's all beat up, and he like touches the little health box, and he's like, oh, I feel brand new. That's how I felt. I really felt brand new. So I got home, started taking ice baths and cold showers every single time I took a shower, and it changed my life. It really did. I know people say that about everything, but it did. It changed my life. Never would I have thought that this is what I would be doing.
Right.
And it's all because of that.
Yeah. My wife, likes to say it's the feeling of before you get in is terrible, but getting out is incredibly. It changes you, in the moment, and I think also in the long term. And if you can just get over that initial hump of, yes, I'm gonna get in, I'm gonna feel like really, really cold for a little bit, but it's totally worth it.
And you just got a Sunhome sauna cold plunge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you cranked it down to 27 yet?
It's been set to that temperature from the get-go.
Okay.
Yeah, because I really wanted to, because I used to have for 2 years or so, I had the original Plunge, that white acrylic tub, and it went to 39, right?
Yep.
But I remember my very first ice bath at the Dave Asprey biohacking conference a couple of years ago was in Morosco, right? And that was ice on the bottom. And, I kind of remembered that feeling, but I wasn't sure anymore. Is there a difference between 39 and 33? And for the longest, I would have argued it doesn't really matter. It's so cold at this point, that you're going to be cold regardless. But there is still something different about if there is ice. I don't know if it's mentally or physically, but there is a difference when there is ice floating in the water and you're sitting in there. It just feels crisp, right?
It does.
Yeah.
So last night I got home. I volunteer at our church, and I'm with like 7th grade boys, and my kids are there. We got home. I had to put the geese away. Had to put the chickens away. The whole family was already asleep except for me and my 2 older daughters. And I'm like, man, I need to unwind and decompress after this night. It was a great night, but it was a late night.
Right.
And I went out and I was like, you know what? Like so many people say don't cold plunge at night before bed. So I went out, I did 15 minutes in the sauna, got nice and sweaty, rinsed off, and I jumped in, and I have it set at 27 right now. So it's like the chunks of ice are like 2 inches thick. And I got in there, and I was only in there for 45 seconds. At night, I try to do like really quick cold dips, I call them, where you're not getting into that cold thermogenesis, but you're just, you get your body temperature, a quick shock of cold.
Right.
I went and laid down in bed, and I fell asleep the fastest I've fallen asleep. And I didn't wake up until this morning, and I use an 8 sleep mattress.
Right.
And it was like my highest sleep score I've had in a while. And I've even done videos on cold plunging before bed and how it makes me feel and how other people, like, how does it make them feel? And it's always been very positive, but it's funny. Like, even though I know that, I sometimes don't do it at night. And going that cold, I thought maybe this was a bad idea.
Right.
I'm going to do it every night.
Uh-huh.
I'm getting in that thing every single night.
And I've, funny enough, I went into the sauna last night with my wife for 25 minutes, and we were, close to dying in there. And I'm like, well, it's not terrible. It took me half an hour to fall asleep, which is typically I'm out within 10 minutes, I'm asleep. And it took me way longer. I'm like, well, this is exactly the opposite of what, the common consensus is, that, heat before bed is good. Cold is not so good because it, can disrupt your sleep. But I think there is a lot of nuance to it. And I think one of the nuances is how long you stay in there and how much stress you're exposed to, right? Or how much perceived stress. And
Absolutely.
if you get wrecked in the sauna, I think it's as counterproductive to sleeping well as if you stay in the cold plunge for 5 minutes and you're shivering, for the next half hour. So I think that the dip, I think, is a very smart idea because it kind of resets you, right? And it calms you down at the same time, as counterintuitive as it might sound. But being in the cold and being really forced to calm down, because otherwise your brain would be freaking out. I think that then extends to your bedtime, and you really stay in that, like, I'm good, I'm calm, and I can fall asleep kind of mode.
No, absolutely. And I think that's my determination. I love the big doctors and scientists who get on YouTube and get on these podcasts and they talk about like 3 minutes, cold plunge 3 minutes. Like, no, it's different for everybody. Right. Everybody's body and everybody's different. And I love having new people come over, and even people who are like super cocky and confident and like gym rats who are just like, no, I'm up for any challenge. And to see how everybody just reacts differently to different cold temperatures, different times of day. There is no like one size fits all for everybody. Yeah. I think that cold water therapy, and this is the benefit to getting something with an adjustable temperature, like a cold plunge that has, a chiller, as we both know. But if anybody's watching and they're like, okay, David, you said cold water therapy, start with a cold shower, jump in a cold river. What's the next level? The next level is getting into a cold plunge, because using ice, you can't really determine the temperature, and depending on where you live, like me in Florida, I was spending like $300 a week on ice. It only took me 1 week to say, okay, this isn't going to work financially. I need to just build something or buy something. And that's how it started for me. I built a DIY cold plunge before really I had ever seen anybody else do it. And that's really to kind of answer your original question of like, hey, I'm doing similar to you. I used to watch your videos all the time. I still do. Like, I subscribe to your channel and I love watching your videos, and I feel like we work with a lot of the same brands, and this is our first time actually talking. But it's just, I really enjoy helping people get cold, whether it's spending $100 or spending, $15,000, whatever works for everybody's budget. Cold water therapy is definitely one of those things that can change lives really quickly. And I love, my favorite thing, Mike, is when people come over and they're people I know struggle with anxiety and depression, and I get them into cold water, and for days, like they don't have it at their house, but for days they're texting me like, I still feel so good from that.
Right. Yeah.
That is the power. And no, I'm not a doctor. That's not medical advice, but just to hear people's testimonies. And I'm not telling them, hey, cold water is going to help you with your depression, your anxiety, or whatever. But when they get in the water and then they get out and they feel that accomplishment, and they feel like just all of the feelings we feel on a daily basis, and they feel so good for days after, that's like, the sauna feels great. And I love a sauna just as much as anybody. But I think that getting cold exposure, making cold exposure a part of a daily habit, that's a non-negotiable. I think everybody needs access to it somehow, some way.
And the funny thing is, I visited Morosco headquarters a couple of months ago, and I talked to Thomas, the owner or the founder of Morosco Forge, and he brought up a good argument, because there are a lot of studies, with heat exposure, with sauna bathing, the Finnish culture and everything. But one of the things that is often not covered or is not mentioned is that most of the people who sauna bathe regularly end with cold. Right. So are all the benefits you're getting from a sauna really only from the sauna, or maybe from the cold after, or a combination thereof? But I think that the point here really is that cold is a critical factor, regardless of how you spin it. And I would also argue that if I had to choose between a cold plunge and a sauna from a benefits perspective, I'd go with the cold. even though it
So
sucks more being in the cold plunge than in the sauna.
it's so true. And a lot of people ask, I get that question a lot. I'm sure you do too, is like, hey, if I could only afford one, should I buy a cold plunge or should I buy a sauna? And there's a lot of next step questions that I like to ask people. Obviously, budget's a concern. Are you renting your house? Do you own it? Do you plan on being there for a while? Because, if you get a barrel sauna, which is great, or even these larger infrared saunas, any sauna, they're not easy to move. Like
No.
once you have it built, it's pretty much there.
Yeah.
So that's always a determining factor. Budget's a determining factor. But really, you just brought up a great point that Thomas brought up, and that's that, I don't know anybody who's ever in the history of life gotten in a sauna, sweated, got all gross, nasty,
And take a hot
and then
shower.
just like, no, and didn't take a shower, and then just kind of like went about their day, and then laid in bed all nasty and fell asleep. I'm sure it happened back in the day, but we don't know that.
Right.
So like you said, like Thomas said, like even if they didn't end cold with a cold plunge, everybody who saunas rinses off with a shower, rinses off with a hose, jumps into a lake, gets the sweat off somehow, and that theoretically, or at the end of the day, kind of cools the body down unnaturally, because you're not just letting your body cool down like you would in a cold plunge by letting your body drip dry and heat up. So you bring up a great point, are all these studies kind of nuanced because there's extra things happening along the way right after the sauna that no one's really talking about.
Right.
So, hey, good call. Good point.
You mentioned sauna bathing, you mentioned cold plunging, but obviously those are, I guess important, but nonetheless just puzzle pieces of an overall, healthy lifestyle. And there is a lot to it. How do you cut through the noise? How do you advise people to cut through the noise? Because if you go online and search for, what's the best diet, what's the best exercise regimen, you name it, there are, there's conflicting information, and sometimes so conflicting that I'm like, if this is true, how can the other one, they're just the opposite, basically, very polarizing.
Yeah.
How do you
so
cut through
polarizing.
how do you figure out what works and what doesn't?
You're going to laugh. I try to just have fun and put myself in uncomfortable positions. I really don't. I follow and subscribe and listen to a lot of the doctors and a lot of the people on YouTube who share studies, go over studies, talk about studies, this and that. I am a study. I am constantly changing. I am constantly trying, and I'm constantly challenging myself. I did CrossFit for a long time. I stopped doing CrossFit and I started really focusing on cardio. I quit doing cardio so much and I became a gym rat. I got off being a gym rat and I went to these boot camps where it's kind of like F45 style, which is all kind of CrossFit style. Yeah. Got back on CrossFit, love CrossFit. And now I'm hybrid athlete training. For the workouts, I get bored. I have ADHD. So I get really, really bored. I can't do the same thing over and over and over again. That's what I love about CrossFit is you never know. Like I don't like to read the workout before I show up. And I'll use, and this probably isn't good, but I use Chat GPT if I'm going to work out at home, because I literally plug in there. This is the equipment I have. This is what I want. This is the stimulus I'm looking for. And I have 45 minutes. Write me a great workout. And Chat GPT will give me a great workout. Or, hey, I'm training for a high rocks and I want to also train for a marathon. I want to do 2-a-days and I want to do it 3 days a week. Write me a workout with this equipment. So I don't do that all the time. I still go to my CrossFit gym and have workouts with the group because I love being around people. I still will go to a gym and work out with a friend who invites me to a gym. I'll work out anywhere for my workout. For my diet, I'm also constantly changing right now. And probably for the past 2 years, I've really enjoyed the way I feel on an animal-based diet. So I did carnivore for about 2 months, not very long, but I did full carnivore for 2 months. I got to that phase where you get the Hershey squirts and I couldn't control it. And I was like, I need to change this. This isn't working for my life. It's not enjoyable. So then I started throwing in some fruit and dairy and honey and some carbs, and I felt so good. So I'm right now about 80% animal-based, 20% junk, 20% horrible, 20% American diet. I have 4 kids that as much as we have access to healthy, great, wonderful foods here, I get to work with a lot of great brands that provide my family with really, really good foods and supplements and snacks and drinks. They still like goldfish and Oreos and Prime, they're still kids in school, and that's the cool thing. So I'm I'm not one of the super strict parents. I want them to enjoy life. They have their entire life to work hard and try to fight off all the crap that they're putting in their bodies now, like me and you are
Right,
from when we were younger.
exactly.
But yeah, so 80% really clean, animal-based, organic foods, grass-fed beef, organ meats. I love organs when I can't eat them because they're hard to get here in Florida. I take supplements, organ supplements. Highly recommend organ supplements. There's just a lot in there that's bioavailable that we can't get from our food that our body really loves. And I feel great when I stop taking organ supplements or stop eating organ supplements for 2 to 3 weeks. I feel it and I get back on it and I feel it. So
Right.
I just experiment. To answer your question, I experiment with myself. I check in with my body. I do use a service. It's called Blokes and Joy, where I get my blood work and my comprehensive labs done every quarter. And we have coaching. So we'll talk about my current workout program, my diet program, my stress levels, what I'm dealing with in life. And they'll develop kind of like a suggestion plan, like, hey, you're starting to trend downwards here, 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 and here. Here's some suggestions that you can change lifestyle-wise, diet-wise, workout-wise to maybe lower your stress levels, whatever it might be, or supplements, whatever. And then every quarter we change it. And I love working with them because it's not me just guessing or going off of my feelings. It's me literally seeing it's me seeing what's happening on the inside of my body on a cellular level. And I've really focused on, have you heard of biological age? I'm sure you have. Yeah. So I've really started to put more focus on my biological age, which chronological age is the number, how long you've lived. Biological is how your body's aging on a cellular level. And it's really cool to check in with that. You have to get tested for it. Blokes does that. I'm sure other companies do too. But to see the changes you make, like I do, I ground every morning. I get morning sun. I don't wear sunscreen. I don't put chemicals on my body as much as possible. I drink high quality water when I can, which is most of the time. I ground. I'm always barefoot, but and I've made some changes to my lifestyle where I can feel and see in the mirror that like I'm trending backwards in a good way biologically. And my wife is too. So she gets to work with Joy, which is the female division. And she's younger than me. She's older than me in real life by like 3 months. And then she's younger than me biologically.
Right.
So she's kicking my butt. And I'm kind of competitive. So got to work harder at that.
Right. That's awesome. Now, I obviously, I for most of my, I guess, health and wellness career, so to say, I've looked at scientific evidence. But I've come to realize, especially in the last maybe 1 or 2 years, that a lot of the science is BS. It's influenced, it's poor quality, and it's very difficult, at least for the average person, to identify, to figure out whether or not the study is good and really meaningful, right? And so I've also been leaning more on the n=1 kind of how do I feel, and that's a very simple experiment, and that's at the end of the day what I recommend to anyone. If they want to figure something out, well, go ahead and try it. Eat only plants for 30 days and see how you feel. Eat only meat for 30 days and see how you feel. At the end of the day, with most of those experiments, there is very little to no harm. You can only learn, right? And you just have to be willing to listen, right? And look in the mirror and say, okay, I'm looking and feeling better than I did yesterday. So obviously, I'm on the right path. If I don't, maybe that was not a good choice. And by doing so, I think it's very easy. Well, no, it's not very easy. It's easier, I guess, to figure out when you look at all the noise and you pick something and you run with it for a little while, whether or not it's working. But I still think if you're like brand new, if you just woke up this morning and say, you know what, my life shit, my health shit, I need to do something. I think it's easier to just follow someone for a little bit who you trust or who resonates with you, and then not just blindly follow them forever, but kind of get your cues, figure stuff out, get like on a certain framework, maybe like an animal-based diet, which doesn't have to be carnivore, it doesn't have to be keto, but somewhere in there, and then you figure out what works for you. I would probably not start with a vegan diet as my first choice.
No. My last recommendation.
Yeah. But nonetheless, you got to find, I think, someone and then start experimenting. And I think that what most people struggle with is finding the time to experiment and to listen to their bodies, right?
Absolutely. And I'm sure you are very familiar with this, but I think the thing that blew my mind the most is because I know a lot of people who are vegan and their energy levels are always really down. And I'm a simple guy. I look at something and I say, that's not right. So I avoid it. I look at something and say, that's what I want. So I am attracted to it. I look at a guy like you, and I've looked at a guy like you for years on YouTube, and I'm like, I want a body like that. Whatever this guy is doing, I want to do. So I start following you. I start watching you. You don't even know this.
Right.
This is our first time ever talking.
Right.
But I start watching all your videos. I follow you on social media, and I try to see what are some of the things that you're doing, and can I do those things? Mm-hmm. And if I can do those things, am I willing to do those things? Right. And am I going to do those things? Mm-hmm. And when I do those things, do I feel better? Does it make me, am I heading towards my goal, or am I heading away from my goal? I think that, I don't recommend vanity, but I do think that when you see somebody who looks the way that you would love to look, you got to ask them those questions, or you got to at least try to do the things that they're doing.
Right.
What are you doing that I'm not doing, that if I did, would it change the way I look and feel? And if you can answer those questions and be honest with yourself and actually do the things, then I'm just a simple guy. I try to see what other people are doing that's working and just emulate that. And then if I can do it better, because we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses, we all have mobility strengths and weaknesses. Some people can't do movements with a barbell. I was one of those people for 9 years out of the past 10 years of doing CrossFit. I could barely do a clean because my elbows just wouldn't work.
Right,
They wouldn't get there. But I asked people who had been through the same thing at my gym, like, oh yeah, for years I couldn't do it either. And then I started foam rolling my lat, and I'm like, really? And then I started to do this weird stretch on the bench and do like the whatever, all these different stretches and stuff. I just started doing them. I'd be home on my couch, we're watching a movie, I'd get down on my knees and do the prayer stretch and stretching out my lats. And now I can do a clean and it feels great. It doesn't hurt anymore. So, and I was one of those people who was like, oh yeah, I just can't do it. But yeah, you can. You just don't want to, or it hurts. And there's just a lot of little things that we can do to make some of those positive changes, no matter where you're at. Somebody's watching this, listening to this, and they're someone who can't break parallel on a squat. I couldn't either. I stopped sitting on chairs, benches, and couches when I had an opportunity. I'd sit on the floor and I'd put my feet flat and I'd try to pull them as close to my butt as possible. And at first it wasn't very close. And now I can literally get my heel to touch my butt. And I try not to sit on chairs as much as possible. And that's just one small change that any human being on the planet with legs can do. And it would help you with your hip mobility and flexibility and help you get deeper on squats and make it hurt less.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Just small things.
I totally agree. Maybe one thing that I wanted to point out, because it's one of the most frustrating things for my wife, is because we have I would argue, a very comparable lifestyle, right? As far as we eat, as far as we sleep, as far as we exercise, all of that. But she's like, I don't know what you're doing that you look like you do, but it should not be possible, and I'm like, I'm sure there is some genetic factor. So that's maybe one thing I want to point out, is there might be people who work out more, who eat better, who sleep better, who do all the things better than I do and still don't quite look the same. Because we all different. My brother will never be as how do you, as the English word, as much muscle volume as I have. He is ripped, he is strong, and he is fit. But I just tend to bulk up significantly easier than he does. And I think I have that more like from my mom, because my mom tends to be a little bit bulkier. My dad is way skinnier. And so I think, there are also genetic components that, I don't say that genetics, dictate your life, by no means. I think epigenetics are way more important. But there are still certain factors that, just by looking at someone, first of all, you usually don't know the whole, story, what they're doing, what they're not doing. And then obviously, everyone is different. So I would, also caution people to not necessarily, especially, as far as, really anything is concerned, and say, okay, if I do exactly what they do, I'm going to get the same results. If that was the case, I would be a 100-meter Olympic champion, and I'm not.
Right? No, you're so right, and I think I love that point. And like for me, I went to Wadapalooza last year in Miami, because I live in Florida. Just drove down there. I wanted to go, and I'm looking around at all these professional CrossFitters, and I realized like, oh, I'm probably never ever, and I had no aspirations to be, but probably never ever going to be a professional CrossFitter
Right.
because I'm a foot taller than almost every person that I see on the floor. Most CrossFitters that are really, really strong are, they're shorter. They're under 6 foot, like most of them. There are some that are taller, some exceptions, but that's just not, I just probably won't get to that level. I didn't start lifting and working out competitively, seriously, and taking my health seriously, heck, until about 4 years ago, really about 3 years ago. And so I won't look at somebody like that and be like, I want to do that. But I look at somebody like you who, how tall are you? We're similar size, I think.
6 feet.
Yeah,
Even,
I'm 6'1". Yeah, I'm 6'1", and I'm like, all right, like I probably will never look just like you, but I like your lifestyle. You got chickens, got geese, you work out, you eat healthy, yeah. So I look at somebody like that and I'm like, okay, I can take some of the things that he does on a regular basis and make it a part of my life. And at least once again, just take some steps forward, take some steps in the right direction instead of sitting on the couch and opening up a bag of unhealthy popcorn or chips. I can make some better choices that will actually take me towards my goal instead of away. And unfortunately, a lot of things we do takes us away from our goal.
Yeah. Speaking of, I have come to the conclusion that the more we try to hang on to our modern life, the more we have to mitigate it, in the sense of, if we were to live out in the wild, naked, half naked, barefoot, no sunscreen, no AC, nothing, we wouldn't have to sauna bathe and cold plunge. It would just be implicit, right? There would not be any other choice, right? But because we want to have this modern, convenient lifestyle, now we have to invest in tools and techniques to kind of mitigate all of that crap that we have invited into our lives. How do you kind of balance between going back to the basics versus spending time and money on mitigation?
Wow, I love that question, and I love educating. So we the school my kids go to, me and my wife have became kind of like the non-employed people who help people with their health. Every day, I was just there this morning, and I had 2 parents ask me questions on how I see your kids working out with you. How do I get my kids to work out? My kid wants to gain some weight. Because he's super skinny and he wants to play football and sports. How does he put on muscle? How does he put on size? So we're constantly just having to ask them questions about their lifestyle. Where do they live? What's their schedule like? Because you can't look at somebody. That's the other kind of thing. You can't look at somebody and say, I want to look exactly like them and expect it to happen. You have to also ask, what's their lifestyle like? Right. So for me, I started making some practical changes in my life to go back to the basics. I stopped using hot water in my shower. I just don't even turn it on hot. Whatever the cold temperature is that comes out, that's what I shower with from the beginning to end. Almost every time I take a shower. Now, sometimes you feel like you want to take a warm shower, or we have a steam room in our shower too. So like if we turn the steam shower on, we turn the hot water on as hot as possible to really get it nice and steamy. And it's very exhausting and fun. But whenever I take a shower, it's a modern convenience, but I turn it as cold as possible. So it kind of brings me back, takes the hot water out of the equation, and it puts me back into the old school roots of, you don't have an option. There's no such thing as hot water. It's unless you boil a pot. Right. So doing that, walking outside if it's possible. I know people live in New York and there's very few places where there's actually dirt and grass, but grounding has been a game changer for me. Getting morning sunlight on my skin has been a game changer for me. And I think about some things like our ancestors back when we didn't have electricity, when we didn't have a home like this, which was just a sealed box of stuff. This is so weird how we do this. Like we live in these homes where we quickly shut the doors, we leave the windows shut, we have the air conditioner just pumping the same air around. We very rarely cycle our air, and we wonder why we're always sick. So in my house, I'll open all of the windows at least 3 times a week, turn the air conditioner off. Sometimes I'll just keep it on and just let, air condition the outside, as my dad used to always say, don't air condition the outside, and just let the whole house completely cycle through so that we get at least some fresh air inside the home. Having plants inside is great. But if I had to give somebody like, hey, do this, it's free, I would say only take cold showers. Don't even turn the water hot. Go outside as soon as you wake up, as soon as your eyes open up, and put your bare feet on the ground and walk around for 5 minutes. If you happen to get up before the sun comes up and you have to get in your car as the sun's rising, roll your windows down, take your sunglasses off, stop wearing those things, and get natural sunlight, not with windows, on your face, on your skin, in your eyes even, before 10 o'clock. If you get to an office and you don't have, like, all of this isn't working out, there's no such thing as morning sun anywhere in your commute. Maybe you take a subway, walk upstairs, get outside, walk outside, and find some small little sliver of sunlight before 10 o'clock in the morning and just let it hit your face. I'm looking at myself on this and I'm like, man, I look so like red and orange. And people are even complimenting or commenting on like, hey, you're like turning brown. Like, what's going on with you? I used to be super pale. I used to be pale and burnt all the time. I used to load up with sunscreen. I was a surfer too. Growing up, I surfed, I wakeboarded, I wake skated, I lived on the water, I lived outside, but I always wore sunscreen. And I always tried to wear like organic, healthy sunscreen too, but I still just stayed pale. 3 years ago, this wasn't long ago, 3 years ago, I stopped wearing sunscreen. Cold turkey, just decided not to wear it anymore. I was watching old school version 1 Liver King when he used to be educational and not doing all this crazy stuff. When he used to talk about grounding and morning sunlight. And I'm like, dude, I actually get that. It actually makes sense. Our ancestors used to do that and they didn't wear sunscreen. How comes they didn't get burned? And they were running around killing animals in the middle of the day, right? So I stopped wearing sunscreen, started getting morning sun, started getting sunlight on my skin. And this is my natural color now. This is just what I look like. And it's October. I'm always outside though, but I get morning sun every single day. My skin tone has changed. My skin health has changed. It's funny because I made videos on this. Like I stopped wearing sunscreen for a year and this is what happened. The comments are like, you're going to get skin cancer. Okay. Yeah. I have friends who wore sunscreen their whole life and have skin cancer. Okay. Yeah. I would rather just take my chances with nature.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And then at night, Mike, this is the thing that's been a game changer too. At night, obviously trying to turn most of the lights off, putting red lights on if possible. I have my kitchen lights where I can turn them all to red. So we have like at least one room in the house that has illuminated lights, but it's red. Going outside and just looking at stars and looking at the moon before I go to bed in the grass, barefoot, grounding, that has been a game changer as well. So here's the prescription. Get up, get outside, barefoot on the ground, get morning sunlight on your skin, only take a cold shower. Then before you go to bed, get outside, bare feet in the grass, bare feet on the ground, and look at the stars. Right there. You don't need a bunch of equipment. That'll bring you back to your roots. Try to eat some beef organs. Try to eat some grass-fed beef once a day. That would be like the simple get started playbook.
And it's, I mean, almost anyone should be able to pull that off.
Right?
You know, and even I would argue, you know, if the meat you're buying is not grass-fed, grass-finished, you know, buy meat, you know, eat some meat, eat some eggs, you know, and fill the rest with whatever you feel like, you know, more or less. And it's so simple at the end of the day, but it appears to be so difficult for many people to wrap their head around, you know, just doing that, because I think everyone is so caught up in all of the stuff that we do. You know, there are so many stressors, so much noise that distracts us, you know, social media and whatnot. People get anxious just by thinking about making better choices, you know?
Yeah, it's true.
And that's obviously counterproductive. What's your take on intermittent living in the sense of, you know, you obviously know about intermittent fasting. You know, there is, you know, exercising intermittently. You don't do it all the time. But if you extrapolate from there, you know, you could say, well, you know, intermittent sleeping might be a good idea too, because anything that kind of, you know, stresses you to a degree makes you stronger and more resilient. What's your take on that, especially as far as sleep is concerned? Because that's one of the topics where I'm like, I don't know if I could pull it off. I don't know if I buy into, you know, not sleeping for a night every so often or cutting my sleep short.
No, I need sleep. Like, since I prioritized sleep, everything in my life progressed positively. And on nights when because I started sleeping on an 8-sleep mattress about a year ago. And before that, I wore a Whoop for almost 2 straight years and only for sleep data. That was before really the Oura Ring and all these other little wearables became popular. Now I just wear a Garmin. Like, that's kind of my wearable of choice. But the 8-sleep, Whoop, all that fun stuff, I found that when I got like 5 to 6.5 hours of sleep, all day the next day I felt groggy and not 100% on. But at 7.5 to 8.5 hours of sleep, on fire, like all day long, from the second I wake up to the second I go back to sleep, I feel just unstoppable and good. Anything over 8.5 hours, I also feel groggy.
Right.
I got into a new
Hmm.
cycle and
Yeah.
I got a little too much sleep. So there's like that sweet spot. And I think it's really important. Here's what I would suggest anybody do. If you can, just buy some sort of very inexpensive but effective tracker and try it. Try it out for yourself, because I think everyone needs to experiment with their own self, because we all have different stress. We all have different, everything's different. Every part of us is different. We're all built differently. So it's one of those things that I would recommend getting a tracker that you don't have to like invest your entire life into, but try some different sleep times. Try going to sleep at different times, waking up at different times, sleeping different amounts of time, drinking different things before bed. The one thing I don't recommend is melatonin before bed. I know that became super popular for a long time. I don't recommend it, just because anything that your body should be producing naturally, if we can control it even into our aged
Right.
years, I feel like that's definitely something to avoid. I don't know. What is your take on melatonin? I'd actually love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, I mean, for the longest, I'm like, any hormone, anything that, that impacts the negative feedback loop in the body is not a good thing to take chronically. Be it testosterone, be it melatonin, whatever, anything you put in and your body stops producing it can't be good, if you do that for
Right.
extended periods. I mean, now if you have jet lag, you travel across time zones, I leverage melatonin. But
Okay.
on a regular basis, I'm,
That's a good idea. I
I
actually didn't think of it like that.
yeah, I'm like, not sure. But then I came across a lot of science that showed that apparently the negative feedback loop is not impacted by exogenous melatonin.
Okay.
Even at crazy amounts that I would never consider, like 50 milligrams or two. There are even some like 200 milligrams of melatonin, which is like nuts considering the body makes, I don't know, a milligram or whatever, per night or per day. So I'm not sure. My gut feeling is that whatever you pop, whatever you apply from an exogenous perspective is probably not worth doing chronically.
Have you ever heard my story with testosterone?
No.
So pre me doing this, pre
Hmm.
me being in content, health and wellness, recovery, all this stuff, I had always lived a somewhat active lifestyle, like we talked about earlier,
Hmm.
always moving. But in the car business, it was not a very active first job. I stayed
Right.
active, and I would have clubs of people who wanted to be active. And like at 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, every 3 hours, we would always meet um, on the front deck, and we would drop down and do 20 push ups, just something
Hmm.
like little micro snacks, like
Right.
throughout the day, or workout snacks, as
Yeah.
people are calling them now. We were doing these for years, just to move blood through the
Hmm.
muscles at work. But we started having kids, stress, drinking a little bit, not ever getting drunk, but drinking a little bit, all the normal but not necessary and very
Hmm.
unhealthy American habits I was doing and I was living. Started losing drive, started dealing with massive brain fog, low libido, and I was young. I was in my early 30s at the time. This wasn't long ago. So my dad, who had been on testosterone, don't mean to put him out there, but like my dad and other people who had been on small
Yeah.
doses of testosterone for a few years, and were like, "Hey, it's kind of a good thing." I didn't know any better, and at the end of the day, no one was influencing me. I made my own decision, but I went
Hmm.
to a local clinic. I got my blood work done. The process was not very fun. I had to go to all these places. I was all over the road. It wasn't like working with blokes where they send someone to your house and it's awesome, but the process was grueling. I got in there and I was super nervous because, one, I don't like needles,
Hmm.
and two, I did not want, just like you said, I did not want to start at an early age taking testosterone when I thought there's other options that were out there. So I sit down with this doctor, and he prescribes me 1 cc of testosterone twice a week is what he wanted me to take. And as you know, that's a lot. But my levels were under 200. I don't mind. I've shared this story, so like I don't
Hmm.
mind sharing this. My levels were under 200. I was at the time like 33 years old, and I was kind of desperate. And I was working out. I was started trying to do some of the right things. This was shortly after I started cold plunging and sauna on a regular basis. So I felt like I was doing some of the right things. And I got my blood work done after I had started doing the right things for
Right.
like 6 months or so. And those were my numbers. So it's like, holy smokes, what were my numbers prior to me cold plunging, taking cold showers, eating red meat, doing all this stuff. So I was somewhat desperate, and I was like, well, I guess I have to. I guess like I'm at this point. So to your point, I said, okay. I didn't know the process. I got home. I had this needle that was like 2 inches long, super big needle, super scary. I'm like, what do I do with this thing? There was no training manual.
Right.
So I call somebody. I'm like, hey, like, what do I do? And they're like, okay, like reach down, grab your butt cheek. I like go to poke myself, and I'm like, I can't do this. Like, there's no way I can do this. So I convinced my wife to do it, and like she does it, and it hurts, and I'm like, everything about it sucked. So, and then like her pushing an entire syringe of the, or not an entire syringe, but a full, 100 whatever it is, milliliters or whatever it is, into my tuchus. That whole process was a process, and I'm like, I got to do this twice a week for indefinitely. Like, there's no way I'm going to do this.
Right.
And it was expensive. Like to your point, like that was a lot of TRT, and it was expensive. So I did it I never did a second shot that week. I just did one. The next week I procrastinated. I didn't do it on the same day. And then I convinced my wife to do it again, and it sucked. The next week. So I never did the full prescription of what they wanted me to do. And then I eventually just kind of weaned myself off and just stopped, like just completely stopped. And then I started working with blokes, and I shared that story with them, and they're like, there's so many other things you could do. You can take TRT. Of course you can take, and you know what, you might benefit from a very, very small amount of TRT, not a full syringe of it, not twice a week.
Right.
That is 100% going to shut down the production of it. So there's like more to the story, and I plan on doing a second video kind of following up. I've had people ask, because I did my TRT experience video on YouTube, and it's helped some people because other people have gone through that same experience. It's like, it's almost one of those subjects that people don't want to admit that they are considering, because it is, kind of looked down upon, because there are other options, and there really are. Like working with blokes exposed a lot of options, and I was able to get my levels to a very good number without having to take supplemental TRT. And we've made some great lifestyle changes, which I would love to recommend to other people. But sorry to like throw that out there on your show, but I just think it's a topic that I don't mind sharing, that I've experimented with that, and can continue to be open-minded to any type of peptide if it's necessary. So it's just fun to kind of learn. Once again, I feel like I'm just a big science experiment.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And, my story is, somewhat similar. I've done it for a while too. And then I realized that it took me almost a year for my LH, the luteinizing hormone, to get back and start producing, or, trigger the production of endogenous testosterone. And I'm like, and I only did testosterone, I think, for 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm like, imagine, doing this for decades, you might never, get back. And at the time I took HCG to kind of keep my own production going, which is, ridiculously expensive.
Right.
And despite that, I'm like, no, you know what? This is so not worth it. There's gotta be better ways of doing this. And so I totally agree, and I appreciate you sharing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully it's helpful to somebody out there. I feel like some people, they see how the Liver King was like exposed. It's like, if you look at this guy and think he's never taken anything, you're already out of your mind. Like, but there's also like, if there's a supplement out there that's going to make you reach your goal a little bit faster, most people are would love to just do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just,
why
we're
not?
humans,
life's short. We all try to get to our goal quicker, and there's usually nothing wrong with it if you just have to be aware of the potential consequences, right?
100%.
And decide if taking the convenient route, if it's helping you in the long run. Because very often I found taking the inconvenient route, being uncomfortable, is much more rewarding in the long run. But sometimes it takes a while to figure that out. Took me 40 plus years.
100%. I want to, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Ozempic, tirzepatide kind of world there, for two sets of people. One, for people who are extremely overweight and really want to lose the weight so they can start exercising. And two, people who are in shape, but just want to get a little bit more cut. What are your thoughts on on that.
Yeah, I mean, for those who wanted to get, more, I mean, at the end of the day, I think everyone should do whatever the heck they want to, it's not my place to tell anyone what they should and should not be doing. I would never consider it. And obviously, you know, the shape I'm in, the health I'm in, it's easy to say, that I would not ever do this. If I weighed, 300 plus pounds, maybe I would have a different view. I don't know. But if someone comes to me and say, hey, I'm way overweight, exercising hurts, my knees, whatever, I can't, I would still argue that, you know, go swimming and go on a low carb, ketogenic, carnivore, whatever diet, you lose that fat incredibly quickly,
Yep.
especially if you're so severely overweight. I mean, going from, I don't know, 150 to 120 pounds is probably significantly more difficult than going from 350 to 250, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So I think there are probably cases where, medication makes sense, where there is a net benefit to it. But I think those cases are a few. I mean,
Yeah.
I know people personally who, they want to lose 10 pounds and take that medication. It's insanity to me, absolute insanity, because you're going to gain that weight back once
Yeah.
you stop, once you cannot afford the medication anymore. And it's much like with a diet, you need to find something that you can do for the rest of your life. There is no such thing as a 30-day diet or a, reset, or, it's all BS, If you don't make the right choices every single day, you're going to be, in a shithole, sooner than later. So
So
that's kind
true.
of my take on it.
It's just scary because like the reason I bring that up is because this morning one of the parents also asked me, like, or didn't even ask me, just commented and said my daughter, so a kid in school, was approved for Ozempic,
It's
and she's not even that overweight. Like she's literally not overweight.
that's mind-boggling.
She it broke my heart. Like, and how do you tell a parent who cares so much about their kids' social credit of not, of not being made fun of for being overweight in school and stuff like that? Like, there are so many other things you can do. And it's just like, out of love, it's like, there are so many other things you can do. And some people watching this, some people listening to this might be, at the second half of their life. And it is a little harder to get started when you're
Yeah.
200 pounds overweight at that point. So always make the best decision for yourself, but definitely weigh out the consequences. Anybody under the age of 30 getting on something like that can truly mess you up for a lot longer than it's going to help you, definitely reconsider.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But make your own decision, do your own
Yeah.
thing, whatever you feel is right. But it just kind of like, I wanted to bring that up and ask your opinion, because it kind of just, it was like a shock that the doctors are prescribing it to kids.
Anything kid related, and the challenge really is that, with most parents, are you going to believe, the influencer on YouTube or your pediatrician, right?
Right.
Obviously, we are not a medical authority, we just happen to share stuff that's been working for us. But a
Yeah.
lot of those things are also, like, I feel like, are common sense. If you really look back at how humans have been doing things, does it make sense to do, what the doctor says, or does it make sense to do what we've been doing for a very long time, depending on how long you think humans have been on this planet, that varies obviously, but however long you think, it's been working, and it's not, and
Right.
it stopped working maybe 200 years ago or even less,
One of the things I like to do is I like to follow people who have a complete opposite take of me. And I would encourage people watching this, or I would encourage anybody to share this with somebody who may feel complete. Like, I have family members who 100% don't care what I say or what I have to show for anything, any of the lifestyle changes I've made in my life or my family's life. Their kids are always sick. They're always sick. They're overweight. They're depressed. They're unhappy. But everything I do is wrong because their
Right.
doctor said otherwise. I would just encourage people to maybe go on Instagram and follow some profiles that are somewhat educational and share conflicting and controversial topics that you don't agree with. Like, I think it's interesting when you follow somebody who is a straight up 100% vegan influencer and see what they have to say about people who eat meat. And I think it's really interesting to see people who are overweight and, I've tried all these different diets and all these different things, but found one thing that works. I just think it's interesting. Like if you're in a mode where you're like, whatever you're doing is not working, you don't look and feel the way you really, really, really want to feel. And the sad part is, Mike, and you know this, some people out there don't know what it feels like to
Right.
feel healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they don't know. Like they've only lived sick and unhealthy for so long that they don't know that even if they're 200 pounds overweight, they can jump into a cold shower or a cold plunge and get out after a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes and feel healthy for like at least 5 minutes. Like they could feel that feeling that we feel on a regular basis of just the endorphins rushing through your body and circulation actually happening. And what's that tingling sensation in my foot? Oh, it's actually blood flow.
Right.
I've had some overweight people get into some of the cold plunges at my house, and they're like, I don't like that feeling. There's something happening in my feet. Oh, that's called blood flow. That's called circulation. You just have never felt that because you sit down for most of your life. And being fun and friendly and and loving and all out of love, it's just like, come over, cold plunge every day, sauna every day. Do these things that make you feel those ways because like your body wants to be healthy. It doesn't want to be sick. And there's things we can do, and they don't have to be expensive things that can help us live healthier, optimized, better lives.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And the main challenge, I think, for many people really is that since they have such a low baseline, that they think they are healthy. I mean, for the most part of my life, I thought I was feeling good until I started feeling good. You know, I'm like, oh,
same here.
You know, and I think you need to make, and that's why I think experimentation, regardless of however you want to experiment, you know, go, you know, on a vegan diet, and if you feel worse, then maybe okay, at least you felt that you felt the delta, right? Do something else, and you felt the delta in the other direction. I'm like, all right, you know, I can actually, this is not, my baseline is not the end of it, you know. And one thing, and then the other thing, especially when it comes to medical professionals, you know, I would always, if someone tells me, oh, you know, you're eating too many eggs, you're eating too much red meat, I'm like, look at me and look at my blood work and tell me what I'm doing wrong, you know.
Right.
The proof's in the pudding, you know. If I'm feeling good, if I'm looking good, if I'm, you know, my blood work reflects how I feel and how I look, why on earth would I stop eating meat, you know? That makes no sense whatsoever.
It's just wild. It's wild too, because like, I've never gotten medical advice from somebody face to face that I want to look like.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like most of the doctors, and this is no offense to doctors. This is no offense to anyone in the medical industry. Absolutely. There's some really great people out there, and there's just like any industry and anything, there's really great people, and then there's the other side. But most of the people who have ever given me any medical advice have been either overweight, bald, just not the look that I'm really going for. And you just kind of think back to that. Like if is the person giving me advice, do I want to look and feel and have energy levels of that person? And if the answer is no, just kind of maybe, I don't know, start making your own decisions.
Right. And it's obviously, you know, one thing if the guy says, hey, you know what, you know, look at me, you know, and that's because I've been doing a certain thing forever and now I'm changing it and I'm feeling so much better. I might not look like it yet, but at least, you know, that's a different story, you know, because not everyone who, you know, who experiences hair loss might be, you know, doing something wrong. Like, you know, I did a lot of, for 3 decades, you know, I did everything wrong I could be doing wrong. And I'm sure I'm paying the consequences, you know, with like injuries and tweaks and, you know, all kind of things that I'm paying now for. But at least I know that what I'm doing now, you know, is not perpetuating, you know, all of those issues. I'm fixing, hopefully, most of that.
No, absolutely. And I think you are. I read a quote yesterday that I loved, and I hope that like anyone watching this who doesn't know who I am, like I wear my heart on my sleeve and I'm very vocal and very open with my thoughts and just with my life. Like I'm an open book. Ask me a question, I'll tell you the answer. I read a quote. It was that your body is a direct reflection of your choices, and it's no shame. That's not like a body shaming thing, but it's like if I chose every day to just sleep in, stay inside, sit on the couch, rarely move, eat processed garbage all day, and drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes, all the things that we all know, like even if you do them, no shame, we all know have negative effects on our health. If I chose to do that myself currently, if I chose to do that for 365 days, guaranteed by the end of 365 days, I would look and feel like crap.
Right.
I just would. Every day we have a choice. We can choose to drink water instead of soda. Here I am chugging a Fit Aid. What am I called? Not a procrastinator.
Hypocrite.
Hypocrite. but we could choose to drink water, spring fed, good water that actually has some nourishment for our body with maybe some good salt and electrolytes, or we could drink soda. Do that enough times, repetitions, our habits, our choices, we're going to feel different. We're going to feel different, or there's going to be a difference in our feelings and in our looks. And I've realized, like, there was a time in my life where I was really chunky and chubby, actually a long time in my life. And I used to say, like, it was just my genetics. I used to say, I'm just built big. I'm a bigger guy. And I am, like, I have larger, I feel like I could put on more muscle if I really focused on it, and I could do those things. I like the way I look. And at the end of the day, like, I didn't like the way I looked not long ago. I look in the mirror and say, holy smokes, what happened? Is this who I am? And I made different choices, and I look in the mirror now and I'm happy with how I look. And there's even more room for improvement, because I know that I'm not doing everything perfectly. But that quote, that your body's a direct reflection of your choices, is such a good quote, because if you're listening to this and you look in the mirror and you don't get excited with how you look physically, it's going to affect how you feel about yourself mentally too.
Yeah.
And like last night, I don't even know if I'm allowed to share this stuff, but like last night, we opened up for prayer, and a young kid that I had never seen before, when I walked in, he was praising, both hands in the sky, crying, praising. And it was just amazing to see. I'd never seen this kid before. It was his first time at this campus, large campus. We normally have like 500 kids there, all from middle school to high school. And they opened up for prayer and said, ask the leaders to come up to the front. He like came straight up to me. I don't know why. Never met this kid before. Came straight up to me. And I'm like, dude, so stoked. I saw you praying, or I saw you praising Jesus, man. That was so awesome. How can I pray for you? Is there anything specific? And he looked at me with like the most sincere eyes and said, can you pray for me? I am fighting depression really bad. Mm-hmm. And I was like, depression? I'm like, how old, what grade are you in? He's like, I'm in 8th grade. Guys, that's a massive problem. Yeah. This is a good looking kid. This kid obviously knows, and he's fighting with depression. Obviously, I prayed for him really well and shared that that's just the enemy's easiest attack on you, to try to take you down from who you are meant to be and called to be. But this is a kid who had, like, in my eyes, as someone who I didn't know anything about him, don't know anything about his home life, his habits, his eating habits, anything about his health. But he looked like he at least took care of himself to some extent, or his parents did. And he had such an energy about him, but he's fighting with depression. If he's fighting with depression and he's openly asking me to pray for him, how many other people are fighting with depression? Right. And I shared one thing, and I'll share this with you. When I jumped into cold water for the first time, when I jumped into that cold river for the first time, I was dealing with depression. And if you knew me at the time, you would never guess, because I married my best friend. My wife is my rock, my everything. I love my kids. They're the best thing that ever happened to me. I made great money in the job that I was in. I had most people's dream job, most people's dream income, house, all the things, material things. And I was fighting depression severely. I jumped in that cold water. When I got out, it was the first time I felt what it felt like to not fight depression. Mm-hmm. And when I read studies and heard people talk about the studies, I never even expressed that to anybody before. Like, I had never really oh, that was the thing. Since I started making cold water therapy, cold showers, a part of my daily life, I mean, obviously other things have changed too. Physically, I've changed. My diets and other things have changed. But that was the thing that initially changed my feelings about myself, my future, right, and my life. And I shared with him, I was like, hey, why don't you, when you get home tonight, take a cold shower and start taking cold showers. And he's like, really? Why? So I shared some of the things that happen, some of the chemicals that are released when you get in cold water and when you get out. And he was like, I will. Thank you. And I just wanted to say that. I feel like that's a story that I want to share with more people, because like, it changed my life. It wasn't like getting into cold water and getting out of cold water didn't change my life, because now I'm a content creator and this is my life. Right. This is my income and this is my livelihood. It changed my life before I ever thought I was going to be a content creator. Mm-hmm. And I just want to encourage more people to experience that.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. Well, that was a good wrap up. I think very much appreciate the hour and almost 8 minutes you spent with me. It was a ton of good information, really good conversation. I think there's a lot to learn on my side, obviously, from what you were doing, and I'm gonna, keep following your stuff and try to pick up what I can and see if it makes sense to make it part of my routine. And yeah, again, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. I don't think it happens very often that at the end of the day, some people say, oh, but you guys are, competitors at the end of the day. But I'm like, there's no such thing as, I think, competition in this niche that we are in. If we were selling Fruit Loops, might be a different, argument.
Right.
But we are not. Most people, unfortunately, unhealthy. So there's a lot of, I think, opportunity to get the word out. And I think the more we can team up and make this happen, I think the better it is for everyone involved.
Totally agree. And I'm honored and thankful you asked me to be on your podcast. I've watched your stuff for years, and just to be able to actually have a conversation with you is really cool. And to know that we have a lot of parallels in our lives, and we do work with a lot of the same brands. And like you said, I actually, I never thought of it like that, but no, I don't look at any other content creator in the health and wellness space as a competitor. I look at, we're each leveling each other up with our content, our delivery, the products, because here's the other thing too. There's so many products. There's so many. Yeah. How do you figure out what's the right one? And I think more content creators that are sharing their honest experience and reviews of products and how the products have maybe changed their lives or have worked for their lives. Cause we're all a little different. So I love different takes, and I will continue watching yours too, because I always enjoy watching your, and I know this is probably horrible to say, but like how you talk, your accent is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, that's one thing I will never be able to shake, regardless of how long I live in this country.
I know, right? And it's awesome. So don't shake it.
All right. Thanks, man. Cool. I appreciate it. I'll let you know when the episode airs, and include all the links that you have sent me. And if there's anything else you want to share, just let me know, and I'll make sure it's all part of the show notes.
Let's do it, bro. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you. Cheers.
Ever wonder why chronic disease is skyrocketing while big pharma and food corporations rake in billions? In our next episode, we expose how the system was designed to keep you sick, and more importantly, how you can break free. Don't miss this one.